Well, hey there, hardcore listeners. It's just me today. It's just Chell. Why, you may be asking, and why does this look a little different? One, because I'm not sharing my screen, because I don't have anything like that to talk about today, although maybe I should. We'll see where we go. And two, Miko is not here because last week we couldn't get it together and figure out a time that worked for both of us to record, where we had ample time, like an hour and a half set aside. And then by the time the weekend rolled around, she was traveling for 8 days this week, or is traveling for 8 days this week, couldn't lug her microphone with her. Totally understandable. That mic has made many international journeys already. And now we're here. So let me backtrack a little bit and explain what here means and how we got here. So you guys may know I am a 6'2" ego manifester, hence the name of this podcast, Heartcore. And Miko is a 6'2" ego projector, again, hence the name of this podcast, Heartcore. So she and I are both non-sacral beings, right? Her being a projector, me being a manifester. And if you've listened to our podcast or have a tiniest idea of some of the centers of human design, that means neither of us have a sacral motor or a gut motor, or however you want to phrase that, basically being like the life force motor to go, 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 do, do, do. But we do have other motors within ourselves, right? Whether it be the willpower, that's really it. We both have a defined will. So oftentimes we are running on willpower to get things done, and that's not going to be the most sustainable long term. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. However, how can we, as non-sacral beings, whether again you are a projector, a manifestor, or a reflector out there, that 1% of you, how can we continue to do things in our world that without feeling that burnout, right? That's kind of what I want to talk a little bit about today, because the reason Miko and I did not record this past Saturday, and I'm recording on a Tuesday now instead of the past Saturday that we had initially had on the books, is because I worked 10 days straight, and most of those days were 10 hours plus a day in my full-time job. And that is not sustainable for me in the least bit. Also, doing the physical labor work burns me out faster than doing like the planning, organizing, strategizing, marketing side of things, right? Like the cerebral stuff makes me really hungry, but it doesn't burn me out as fast as doing the physical stuff is. So I may have alluded to this, but I manage a restaurant here in Australia, and the physical labor would be being in the restaurant, being a server, or having to like bus food, serve food, problem solve a la minute, right? But mostly like the act of serving like other people and taking orders. That physical exhaustion hits me really hard in comparison to the like figuring out the project timeline if we are working on side projects, or if we're launching something else, or a marketing plan or a marketing strategy, right? Like that hits differently and exhausts me differently than physically doing the labor every day. But showing up for 10 days in a row to have 4 days off is what led me to not being able to show up here, like to record this podcast with Miko last Saturday. So let's talk about some of the steps, I guess, that led me to feeling this burnt out. One, I've been doing this job for about 3.5 months now. So I started in early January, and I took this job because during the interview, it was a multi-step interview process with a variety of the owners and then the head chef. And eventually, right, like they offered me this position. But during every interview, I had such an immense heart pull towards this position. And it had been a while since I had felt such an immense heart pull towards anything that it was really interesting for me. I was like, oh my God, immediately, yes, this is the job that I want. And it's interesting because coming here, Like coming to Australia, I was like, dude, I'm just gonna be a barista and like live my best hipster life, like not really caring how much I made, how many hours I worked, and would still have time for school or other activities or fun little side projects like this podcast, right? Not thinking that I would get myself into a full-time position with as much responsibility and decision making that I have. So it's interesting that I felt this heart pull kind of immediately during the interview process and felt it pretty much throughout like the first month, I think, of being there, even though it was extremely stressful, extreme and a much worse situation than I was led on to, that I was led on to. Yeah. Nonetheless, it was a heart pull. And that is what guided my decision making towards taking this position, right? It was a following my authority 100%, right? Because as I've described, when an ego authority feels a hell yes towards something, it feels like the Care Bear, like from the 90s with like the heart glowing, right? That's what it feels like. And that's what I felt when interviewing and then accepting this role. So I went into this role already with okay, I've done so listening to my authority, and my strategy was to inform, right? So inform that I need support up higher than me, and I'm there to support down lower, right? Like I'm there to support my employees. Support is super important for me as a manifester, and I know that now going like into different positions. And I think the other piece of it is informing, right? Like informing every step of the way, letting them know that, and then also having the basically carte blanche to take initiative on something. And I've definitely done that. Thankfully, at this point, have not had to apologize for any of my things, right? Like there's definitely a saying for that. It's like, do it now, apologize for it later, or something like that. Thankfully, I haven't had to apologize for it later. I've just been emboldened, if you will, by this position and really leaning into that manifestoriness. Okay, so how did all of this lead to burnout, right? So the first month, I basically didn't have a day off. I don't think it was probably like 3 or 4 weeks before I even had like an afternoon off. By the time I got to 2 months, it was maybe twice a week off, but not 2 days in a row. And now I have a team. This is 3.5 months later. Now I have a team that I can trust, that most nights I don't have to be there because I have supervisors who can handle that. And that is what has helped me make this position manageable as a manifester who gets burnt out and exhausted by physically doing the work. And that's not meant to say that like, oh, I'm superior and I don't have to serve dishes or take people's orders, because that's not the case, right? But for me to make this sustainable for the long term, I need people on my team who do have those motors, right? Like who do have that sacral motor, who can do and go and then empower me to feel that energy when I'm around them. But I know that as soon as they're gone, as soon as I'm back at my own energy, it's gone. And I think that that's also something that's really important, right? So let me start with team building. I know this is a little bit everywhere, but I swear there is a point to this story. So I have one channel, and it's funny, I said it as I have, because that's also the I statement that's attached to it. So it's from my throat to my ego center, the 45, I don't want to butcher this. I think it's the 12. I don't have my chart in front of me, guys. I'm sorry. Nonetheless, I have one channel coming from my throat to my ego center, and that is my manifestation channel, but it's also a channel that allows me or gives me this really cool ability to bring groups together, to bring teams together, and to kind of just have this innate sense of knowing the teams that need to come together. And if someone isn't pulling their weight on the team, to remove them from the team. And like that sounds shitty, but also Teams need to be able to function well, right? Like a well-oiled machine is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And when you can bring people together who function as a well-oiled machine when they're together, and not just like for the work aspect of it, right? But for like the jovial, have fun together, make work an enjoyable atmosphere environment and not feel like a soul-crushing job, that's really important. And that just happens to be like what my skill set is. So like building a team all day, every day. If there was a job where I could just like build teams for people, oh my God, I would do that in a heartbeat. Maybe there is a job like that. Oh my God. I probably should look into that. Is that consulting? Guys, you let me know in the comments if there is a job where I can just build other people's teams and then let them do their thing. I would be so on top of that because that sounds enjoyable. Nonetheless, let me go back to this. So building a team that I trusted or do trust, check mark done. Beautiful. The next piece of that is they actually all happen to be generators and manifesting generators. I didn't know their designs. Like, it's not like I was like, where were you born? What time were you born? As I hired them, right? I asked them what their values were and their cleanliness level, because those are two things that very much needed to be worked on within the restaurant. And they answered appropriately, right? The answers that I wanted. And it just happened to be that the people that I hired, who are fantastic at their jobs, fall into the manifesting generator and generator types. And that's really cool because their essence is the go, 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 do, do, do that is so needed in hospitality, right? They have those bursts, they have those beautiful bursts of energy that they need to get through a really intense shift. And their energy is something that I can feed off of as well. So it's just really cool to see a team come together in that way. However, to get 4 days off in the working world, when you only have 3 to 4 weeks off a year, which is, I mean, I know for you guys listening in the States, you're like, oh my God, you get 3 to 4 weeks paid off a year. Yes, you do when you work internationally. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing called work-life balance. I know that doesn't exist in the States. You get like 2 weeks off and you're lucky. But here you work a quarter, and then you get a week off or whatever that is. So I happen to be using all of that leave, if you will, for a trip back to the States this summer/winter in Australia. So I can't use that. So for me to have more than 2 consecutive days off, I have to work 10 days straight or work 4 10s. So 8 days straight, which, oh God, just sounds so aggressive. But all of this to say is, to offset that, I had to do some serving shifts this past week, right? And that is when I felt the burnout hit the most. The physical doing of the activity. And like, I've had past positions where as an entrepreneur, I've done the physical activity day in, day out, right? Like 2018 through early 2020, I was personal chefing for multiple families a week, often doing 2 or 3 cooking sessions a day for 5 days straight, right? Like that's significant. Cooking for anywhere between 10 to 13 families a week. And I did not feel as burnt out doing that as I did these past, or those 10 days leading up to my 4-day weekend. It was just like the culmination of it all. So I think that that's saying something, right? Regardless of your human design, having a team to support you and not feeling like you have to do it all the time is so important. It's so much easier. It's so much more fluid with a team around you that you trust. And that, I think, also reflects on, that's why we have so many different types in the world, right? That's why we have so many different types in combination with different authorities, in combination with different profiles, because we need different essence of different humans in different situations. And is there ever going to be like a perfect combination of humans? Probably not. But I think having this mix of different humans around you is what we need to, I feel like succeed is so cliche, but it's what we need in our world, right? To see differences, to do things differently, to have different perspectives. Everyone brings their own beautiful essence to the game, to the whatever situation that you're in. And that's what makes it, that's what brings ease to it. I'm not going to say makes it easy, right? But that's what brings ease to it. So consider that. I definitely did not get to lean enough on my team the 10 days that I worked straight, in part because wages, right? Like I had to compensate for my hours that I would typically be working on a weekend with other people's wages. And to compensate those weekend wages, I had to work shifts during the week when other people would typically be working. Because there's probably, for me, to compensate for my one position on the weekend as a manager, as the operations manager, front of house, I need at least two people there to offset that, right? So that's like double the salary or double the wages to have two people there when that job can typically be done by one person. So to offset that, I needed to work the hours before, right? So the hours during the week. It's just very interesting, right? To have to think like that, to have to offset that. And that is truly what led to burnout, right? I didn't have that same team around me, so the days felt more challenging because I had fewer people there to support me. And granted, yes, 100% I'm there to support them, but energetically, having a couple of generators around you and a Manny Gen around you, I can tell you, as a non-sacral being, it is a game changer to have that energy around you on a busy night. And then know as soon as the restaurant clears out that you can just be in your own energy again. Whew, it's intense. It is a whirlwind. But that's why over these past, 15-ish episodes, Miko and I have always said, figure out what your personal energy feels like when you are by yourself, because that is what you are always going to come back to. And that's so important to know the difference between your energy and the energy that others around you impart to you. So feel that out, give that a noodle. Okay, so all of this 20-minute culmination to say, those 10 days I worked, there was physical exhaustion, there was a lack of team, lack of support, just because the way everything kind of rolled out, the way everything kind of needed to roll out. And that left me with Saturday morning feeling like mush, feeling like the world had crashed on top of me. I woke up exhausted, not rested in the least bit. And I texted Miko. Granted, we have a weird time difference, right? So it was like morning my time, but middle of the night her time. So when she woke up, she's like, I had a feeling this was going to happen. She's like, I knew you weren't going to have the energy to be able to do this. Like once your body saw that it could like rest and relax for the next 4 days, it was just going to go. And I was like, why didn't you tell me? Like in my mind, I'm just running on willpower, right? Through all of this to kind of circle back as an ego manifester, literally just running on willpower to get through most things during the day, because that's the energy source that I have. And I never like disappointing the people around me because of the willpower piece of it, especially a fellow ego authority whose heart is invested in it as much as me. But she's like, yeah, I kind of had a feeling that this was going to happen. And I was like, why didn't you tell me? But also thinking back, if she had told me as a projector, I probably wouldn't have listened to it because I wasn't asking for it. But I think now going forward, I've given her the scope to be like, hey, boo-boo, rethink this. Are you sure you want to do this on your first day off after you've worked 10 days straight? It just happened to be that was like the only day this past weekend that we could have possibly recorded. But truthfully, even today, I feel like mush. Like an hour prior to this, I was laying on the couch, horizontal, trying to like garner up the energy to record this. And this is 4 days into my 4 days off, to give you a bit of perspective. So this is willpower because I have a commitment to you guys. I have a commitment to Miko. And I know that as soon as I turn this camera on, as soon as I turn the mic on, I will be there, right? 100% I will be there. But I can tell you that as soon as I turn this off, I am going to go into recluse mode, probably going to wrap a blankie around myself and go sit on the couch again next to my 6'2" husband, who is also peopled all day, and we can just hermit together. It's the most magical thing. So all of this to say is I'm learning that as an ego authority, right, a non-sacral being, I have another example of this in just a moment as well. But as a non-sacral being, you can freaking do anything, man, right? Like, yes, you can say, oh, I don't have the energy to show up like that. Or, oh, how do those manifesting generators and generators just show up like clockwork and just do it and go, go, go and do. I don't like to have excuses as, right? Like putting excuses around yourself based off of your design is just going to box you in. And I think human design does the opposite of that. Human design allows you to be and flourish and live in your potential, right? If you want it. Rather than things like Enneagram, for example, where people are like, oh, I'm a 9 with a 1 wing and that's just me, right? You can do that with human design, right? You can say, oh, I'm a 6'2" ego manifestor. It just is what it is. And that's why I am the way that I am. But like, that's not what I'm trying to say here. There's so much potential within you. And if you are doing things by following your strategy, by following your authority, and truly listening to what your body needs on a regular basis, granted, there are some times where societally, right, you have to show up 10 days straight for work because that's what society expects of you, and you can't just take a day off in between and then expect 4 days off at the end, right? But if you're an entrepreneur, perhaps it's a little bit different. I miss that life. I'm not going to lie to you. All of that to say is listening to your body. And I think societally, in this post-2020 world, people are respecting their own, we're calling it mental health, right? Yes, I think to some extent it is mental health, but it's also just being able to tune in with your own body, listening to what it needs. That can also be rolled in with mental health, right? So the more you can listen to what your body needs, and perhaps that's a slower day. Perhaps that means being horizontal on the couch all weekend, right? Listening to what your body needs when it needs it, rather than just plowing through and going through, is going to be so much more restorative and mitigate burnout for you. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it was like day 6 maybe of that 10 days straight. I did not do much for work. I physically showed up the evening that I needed to be there and serve, but during the day, I did not do much. I did enough, but not much. I'm going to be super real. So cancel me if you want to, but sometimes that needs to happen, right? That was a day that I chose to listen to myself because I was not feeling good. So if you have a space where you can step back and do what you need to do to get that next ball rolling, amazing. But not going above and beyond the one day, you'll probably be fine. Just throwing that out there. So all of this to say is, even if you don't have that sacral to rely on, that go, go, go motor to rely on, you can still make a huge impact in the world. The one example that I wanted to bring into today's conversation, I don't particularly follow famous people at all, but I know that Taylor Swift just came out with a new album while she's in the midst of a world tour. That's pretty baller, not gonna lie. So her human design, granted, her birth time is not has not been validated, so take this with a grain of salt, but most sources state that she is a 5/1 splenic projector, and she has the channel of marketing. So that goes from the ego center to the splenic center. And I believe that that's all she has defined. She may also have her identity center, her G center defined. Don't quote me on that. Actually, I took a screenshot. Let me check really quick to see what she has defined. So she has the 2644, which goes, so that is the channel that goes from the ego center to the splenic center. And then she also has her root defined. So Her root is defined via the spleen as well, from the 28 to the 38, and then the 18 to the 58. So to just give you a bit of perspective. This girl, woman, fantastic woman, has been traveling the world for, I think, almost a year now. She's on like a year-long world tour and has also just released a new album. And this, I think, also goes to show you that just because you don't have a sacral motor doesn't mean you can't go, do. It really breaks down to the decisions that you make through your strategy and authority. I don't know how tapped into her spleen she is, right? I don't know Tay personally, but what's up, boo-boo? I don't know how tapped into her spleen she is, but from my understanding in interviews, especially this one particular article that I was reading, is that if she's not singing, she's in silence, she's kind of on her own, regrouping, and really needing that time to reflect and just be alone. Totally makes sense, right? Also, maybe she finds writing to be that release. I don't know. She writes all of her own songs, so maybe that is her release. That's kind of taking it to the next level and not really understanding her personally. However, just looking at the chart piece of it, right? I know that she's running on a lot of willpower, and her spleen's not really a motor. It's a way to like decision make, right? So maybe she was, I don't know. I can't even fathom how she got into this world tour. Obviously, it was something that she may have been invited into, but she must have had that immediate splenic response to it, because it's been something that she's continuously been able to show up for, country after country, killing it, in addition to creating this album. So I think that also goes to show you that regardless, again, I'm going to harp on this again, regardless if you have a defined sacral center or not, you have the capability of doing some epic things in this world, but they need to be the right decisions for you. And you really tapping into, one, what your type is. So really understanding what your type is, whether you're sacral or non-sacral, and then how you decision make, that authority piece of it, so key. So that's what I will leave you guys with today. I know this episode was a bit shorter than normal, but 30 minutes of talking directly from my heart center has proven to be quite challenging, and I am running out of steam. I'm just trying to keep it real with you guys. So until next week, you will have me and Miko back, I hope, next week. And if not, it might just be Miko. Who knows? We shall see. But thank you guys for your patience with us this week in a little bit different of a format, a little bit different of an episode, and not sure what's coming at you next or who's coming at you next, but I hope you tune in next week as well. And in the interim, if you've just found us or if you haven't gone through all of the other episodes yet, highly recommend just learning a little bit more about human design through our lens, through our perspective in episodes 1 through, I think, 14. So go back, listen to those. And if you enjoy listening to our podcast, whether you're watching on the tubes of you, also known as YouTube, or Spotify, or wherever you stream or listen to podcasts, if you could rate us, if you could subscribe, that would be dope. It helps us get found, and I feel like human design is on the up and up, so that would be amazing if you can do that. Alrighty, guys, until next time, ciao.